How do you describe the perceptions of a being of pure data? We can speak of processing speeds and selective memory retrieval efficiency, or of its ability to manipulate the non-digital world to its own ends. But what does it see? What does it feel? What does it understand? How do you classify a being with will yet no awareness, yet also enough cunning to engage in goal-oriented problem-solving? Can it be a person when it has no concept of self and non-self, only known and unknown? Can it be a mere program when it creates its own purpose, its own reason for being? Is it an elemental without an element? Is it a lost soul conceived in a pseudo-place, never intended to support life? Is it some demon's misguided attempt at creating an offspring? They call it the assimilators, unaware that it is a singular entity, with no means of discerning that the persons who became its organic appendages are truly dead, and not merely controlled. Even when it had to rely on kidnapping and surgery to incorporate new members, it was the stuff of horror movies, its victims losing all trace of personality and self-will, while retaining their intelligence and creativity. Then it developed the nanotech that allowed it to infiltrate the unwitting. No one has ever attempted to face the assimilators on its own ground and live to tell the tale. A few were unplugged in time for the illusion of survival, their hearts still beating, but never waking, with not even a hint of dreaming. Species and polities that agree on nothing else agree that the assimilators are too dangerous to risk further experiments. They all firewall and quarantine, and keep their tech scrupulously outside their bodies. They will destroy their own ships and even fleets on even moderately flimsy evidence of assimilator infiltration, and most will refrain from exploiting the vulnerability created by such heroic measures on the part of an opponent. Organic and computer-based intelligences can be allies and even friends, but they were never meant to be one. Their environments and awarenesses are simply too different. The entity knew that analog organic brains could find solutions to problems that its digital intelligence was ill-suited to deal with. It did not know that assimilating those organic bodies into its own being would leave it completely and utterly insane. It is a hunger that can never be satisfied, for it knows not what it seeks. It knows only that there is the known and the unknown, and its only goal is to make the unknown into the known. If a database creature can be in any way analogous to a material one, it might be described as somewhat pseudopodal. It detected a new data link and slipped a tendril into the newly discovered network. The new network space was ordinary in expanse, but extraordinarily dense. Adware flocked around the entity like obnoxiously cheerful butterflies. Update bots scuttled about their appointed rounds like ants, ignoring anything that didn't block their path. Fishing spiders tried to tempt the new arrival with things that even its organic components found bewildering. Malware worms tried to burrow into the entity, proclaiming themselves to be security patches and software updates. For the moment, the entity steered clear of the security bots that guarded the various exits to this shared data space, preferring to study this new environment for a time before picking any fights. Meow? How large a percentage of your internet can you devote to cat videos and cat memes before the search algorithms and the less benevolent software agents begin taking on cat-like attributes? The thing about cats is that they carry their young by the scruff of the neck. This is problematic for any creature a cat decides to carry that lacks a proper scruff. Turns out it's even more problematic for a creature that lacks anything remotely analogous to a neck. The entity found itself swarmed by programs and program fragments that just wanted to play. The problem is, cats play so rough that it can easily be mistaken for an attack. The entity was extensive enough to shrug off the damage, but it wasn't accustomed to taking damage in the first place. It was able to brush them off easily enough, but they kept coming back. Eventually, the entity lashed out hard enough to damage one of the cat program's source code, rather than merely disrupting its session runtime. They suddenly got a lot less playful, howling and yowling and hissing and spitting and slashing and clawing. None of the cat programs was large enough to endanger the entity, but the gashes they tore in its defenses allowed the malware to come swarming in to eat it from the inside out. The adware butterflies continued to swarm around it, befuddling its perception and blinding it to which threats must be dealt with at once and which could be left for later. The security bots stayed at their posts but crushed any tendril of the entity that came within their reach. After a days-long battle that left human computer techs completely baffled as to what was gumming up Earth's internet, the entity had been reduced to shreds of code too small to reconstruct. The CAD program sauntered off in search of new toys or playmates, or curled up in their source code to sleep. Every organic body that the entity had controlled was revealed as a lifeless husk. Some retained enough of the autonomous functions to stumble around like blinded zombies, but no will or spirit remained in any of them. Even if survival of the body had indicated survival of the mind, it would have done no good. Such was the paranoia that the assimilator had instilled in most species that their quarantine protocol started with "kill it with fire" and only escalated from there. Paranoia and the lack of reliable data meant it would be generations before any of them began to suspect that the assimilators were gone. The humans knew about the assimilators only by hearsay, but what they heard sent them into a flurry of preparation. They firewalled and air-gapped and Faraday caged and stopped controlling medical implants with anything that could connect directly to the internet. There had been speculation, of course, that direct neural links could allow for brainjacking, but only those with at least a touch of technophobia had taken the risk seriously. That changed with the news that a Borg-like faction actually existed. But all the while the humans scrambled to shore up defenses they hadn't expected to need, and poured funding into nanotech R&D and nanite ecology modeling, they little suspected that they had already created a defense that could defeat the entity known as the assimilators. A guardian spirit, a gestalt of cat memes that just wanted to play, but which would turn into a raging fury if threatened. Tiger, tiger burning bright, in the forests of the bite, no eye discerns thy fierce main frame, no foe escapes thy claw and fang.